We're rolling. It is time, friends. Let's talk about what it was really like working at Universal Studios in Hollywood. How do you get an interview? If you go to USH Careers, if you type that in, you should be able to find a list of jobs that they have currently open, and then you would submit an application via that link. Once that is done, if your qualifications match or they want to know more about you, they will schedule an interview. Now, I have heard different things. I heard that some people receive a phone pre-screen. I know that for me personally, I was just called straight in and I did an in-person interview. I did have 2 interviews. The reason I had 2 interviews is because I specifically requested that I be placed at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, but specifically for Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. That attraction required approval from a supervisor within the world. I interviewed with a person from Potter Management on a separate day. So I had 2 interviews, but it was only for that reason. Otherwise, I would have been placed at literally any other attraction. That would have been fine, but it just wasn't what I wanted. Which does kind of lead me into a tip. If you know what you want to do at Universal and you have very strong preferences, communicate them. Obviously be respectful about it and be understanding of your experience and how that lines up with what you want to do, but you should always advocate for what it is that you really want to do, especially at Universal, because they care about it and they will listen to you. Will they hire people with restricted availability? The thing with Universal is that it always depends what department you're going into and what kind of role they're kind of looking to fill. For ride operators, I knew a lot of people that were in school. I was in school myself. This was a really great job to have for someone who sometimes ran into availability concerns because they were so willing to work with your schedule. I cannot speak for the rest of the park. I cannot speak for the rest of the roles, but I know for ride operations at the Wizarding World, they were very accommodating of other things I had going on outside of Universal. It made it very easy for me personally to work with it, even when I had moments of availability that were much more restricted. But keep in mind, why your availability is restricted does kind of matter, and I would be honest with them about that. They're the most willing to help when you are telling the truth. I will just leave it at that. When I became a performer at Disneyland, I was working both Disneyland and Universal Studios in Hollywood. They're not close to each other in California. They are in Florida, but they are not in California. I was also a full-time student at the time. They tried to work with my availability the absolute best they could. I was not working a lot at that time. The next question that I've received is about scheduling. So for scheduling, during peak seasons, you will normally get scheduled a lot. Scheduled during off-peak seasons, you will normally not get scheduled very much. Scheduling is done based off of seniority. So whoever has worked the most hours, because seniority is based off of hours worked, there is like a ranking of people and how those shifts are kind of designated. If you are a new hire, but you're hired during a peak season, try to work as much as you can. When the off-peak season hits, it will give you a better chance of having a higher seniority and being able to get a few more shifts. I will let you know right now, during off-peak seasons, it can be really hard for someone who has just started because there is a chance that you only get scheduled maybe 1 shift a week, maybe not at all. If you're in school, this works out really well for you. If you're not in school, this becomes a problem for a lot of people who need full-time work. So just keep that in mind. I've received a different question, which is I was hired for seasonal and how do I stay on? And it kind of goes hand in hand with scheduling. Everyone is hired seasonally. Universal hires you on a seasonal basis. Once you reach a certain number of hours worked, you are automatically in the system as part-time. The thing about Universal is that it is unionized. You belong to local B192, and because of that, there are certain parameters that you have to meet in order to qualify for different statuses. So it's less of applying to stay on and more of a, if you just keep working the hours that you're scheduled and or trying to pick up shifts, if what you want is to work more, then you will eventually reach that minimum to be qualified into like the next section of employment per se. It is actually, I found, a lot easier because you don't have to worry about kind of reapplying or anything like that. The only issue is that it can be really hard to hit the minimum hours. So I think for my first full year at Universal, I was still classified as like seasonal, which at that point, like I very much was not seasonal. Like at that point I had already hit lead status. There's all these little subsequent thingies, basically just like you don't have to do a separate application, just like focus on you and keep working your hours and you will stay there. As long as you don't do any anything that is terminable. I will say at Universal, it is a lot harder to get fired because they are unionized. There has to be like a full case against you. Don't make that happen and you will be fine. It is not hard, but attendance is something that will get you. I have been asked, what did you do on your first day of orientation? I actually have a whole video on orientation, so I will link that below. But a very, very basic overview of orientation is it's an introduction day to the brand and to the company. You will learn very basic things about what you need to know. I believe they do measurements for costuming, if I remember correctly, and you get about an hour in the parks to do this little scavenger hunt thing. It is not a long time, but it is pretty cool to experience. And then afterwards, you have your team member ID. So if you want to go into the parks afterwards, you are able to do that. I did take advantage of that and it was really, really fun. Try to make friends in your orientation group because you are all starting together. I found other people who were ride operators for my orientation, and so we got to kind of connect and become friends. We were friends into all of my time there. So talk to people, be social, get to know everything, pay attention, you'll be fine. One of the biggest questions I get asked is, can you go into the park with your ID for free? Short answer is yes. There are blockout dates for employees. There are very, very, very few blockout dates to my knowledge, at least from when I was there. I never really felt the blockout dates. Like, I felt like I could go into the park literally whenever I wanted. The follow-up question that I get is, can you get your friends and family in for free to the park? The answer is yes, but not with your ID. There's a separate section of comp tickets that you receive after a certain number of hours or time worked within the company. On your anniversary, you get like a set of them. You will start out with a couple. I would plan those days. The thing that I will encourage is, if you work there and you have a loved one, maybe a partner or like a best friend that you know is gonna want to come with you to the parks like all of the time, maybe try getting them to get like an annual pass. They're not too crazy for like the lower tier one, and then they can just go to the parks with you whenever you guys both want. But you do get comp tickets that you can save up. The other cool thing is that your comp tickets do work at Universal Studios in Orlando, and I have used some of mine to go and do that. It is a really fun perk. Be smart when you're in the parks. The complimentary tickets are tied to your name. Your ID is tied to your name. So if you do anything, it can get back to your employer. The biggest thing that I will warn against is every year for the Halloween Horror Nights previews, people lose their jobs. And people lose their jobs because everyone goes to Horror Nights and drinks. And drinking is fine. If you can handle your drinking, there is nothing to worry about. If you know you get a little wild when you drink, I would refrain from partaking, because anything you do can get back to your location, and there is nothing worse than getting fired for something so silly. It isn't worth it. It isn't worth it. Don't fight other team members. Be smart. Okay, just be smart with it and you will be fine. What was the pay situation like? I believe that when I first started at Universal, which was in 2022, I started at like $15.75. It was very much minimum wage. The beautiful thing about unions is that I kept getting raises pretty frequently over the next couple of years. By the time I left, as a supervisor, I was making $23 an hour. As a lead, I want to say I was making $21 an hour. And then as a ride operator, I was like making $20 an hour. I could be a little bit off, like maybe a few cents off on some of those, give or take $1, but that's pretty solid compared to $15.75 what I started with. So after about 2 years and 8 months, I'd gotten up to $20 an hour base, and then everything else built upon that. I think that the overall through line for me is like, Universal is an investment job. You have to know what you want to do, but you can get there. You just need to put in the work first, and you need to understand that it will be work. It will not always be a walk in the park. It is hard. It is hot sometimes. You will get tired. There will be drama. That is just how life goes. But if you keep your head down and keep working at it and keep up with having like check-ins and stuff like that about your performance, this can be a very, very, very fruitful job. I really recommend it, which brings me to the next question I've received. Was it hard or easy? What's the question? Was it hard to move up to lead/supervisor? I feel like this is a very subjective question because everyone has a very different experience. For me, moving up to lead wasn't that hard, but it requires growth. You have to understand who you are, you have to understand what kind of leader you want to be, and you have to already act the part before applying to be a lead. I think that it is really important for people to develop leadership skills in general. I was lucky in that I have done a lot of that work throughout my life, and so I felt ready to take on a leadership position. Not everyone has to move up in the company, and I will tell you this, there are a lot of people who try very hard for very many years to move up and don't. It is so subjective, and it really depends on the kind of work that you're putting in that your management team can see and can appreciate you for. I was very lucky, very lucky to make team lead at my attraction before my year even hit. I was also very lucky to be accepted as a team lead for Halloween Horror Nights that same season, and I was very lucky to be able to go and do that for operations before coming back to my attraction, because I got to learn kind of trial by fire what it's like to be a leader and what that can look like within Universal. That was my first really big challenge in a job, truly, because I had not been a part of a leadership team before. It was one that required a lot of self-reflection and a lot of openness to criticism from the people I was leading, a lot of understanding and a lot of hours and a lot of time and a lot of work, but it was very worth it. I think because I made the most of it, I was able to get the most out of it. I took that back to my attraction and then had a year's worth of lead experience by the time I was applying to be a supervisor for Horror Nights. The great thing is that allowed me to move into entertainment, which is really where I wanted to be. So I got to experience what it was like to be a part of the entertainment events team for Halloween Horror Nights. I worked very hard. I continued to push myself. I continued to lean into the fears, to grow and to handle the hard situations. And I was very lucky to be chosen to stay on as a Grinchmas supervisor. I had truly just the most amazing time at Universal, not to get emotional on you. The last question that I've been asked is, did you expect to stay for so long? And the truth is, I did not. I didn't know what I was expecting when I joined. I just knew that I wanted a change and I wanted to be back in a theme park environment. I remember looking at the Hogwarts Castle in Burbank and just thinking to myself, like, man, it would be so cool to work there. Like, that would be so sick if I could just like be a Hogwarts student and like be inside the castle every day. Like, wow, like who wouldn't love that job, right? That's all I wanted. As time went on, I just realized that I was surrounded by people who wanted to see me succeed and who were willing to put in time and energy into me to do that, and that I was willing to put in time and energy to do that for myself. And the more that I put that effort into myself, the more success I was finding, and the more that I was able to stand up for myself and then advocate for others and take that into leadership positions and be able to do that in entertainment. Once I got into the entertainment department, I realized I could do this for the rest of my life and be happy. And that's actually why I left. I found myself having moments where I just wished I was in the makeup chair and I wished that I was on stage, because all I wanted to do was be a performer. I knew that I didn't have the drive in me to be a performer only anymore because of how much I loved my job as a supervisor. So I made a sacrifice. I left LA completely and I moved back to New York, which is where I'm from. I moved back to Queens, which is where I was born and raised. And I decided to stop running away from all the things that I had been avoiding and to heal. And that's what I've been doing for this past year, and that's why you haven't seen me on YouTube very much. I miss Universal like every single day. So the best way for me to wrap this up is, if you're even thinking about trying it, just do it. Just try it and see what happens, because you truly never know where that life or that path will lead you. And if you ever find a moment where you want to just audition or go for something, then just go for it. Don't let anything stop you. The only reason I moved back to New York is because I knew I had unfinished business here. So what am I doing now? I'm a theater major at a local community college. I'm just finishing up my first year back in school, but specifically for theater this time. I have already done a lot of wild things since being back here. I had an internship at a recording studio for a period of time. I just found out that I got a new job, which I'm very excited about. I just turned 28. And so what I see for myself is that I would like to become the strongest, most magnetic, most successful version of myself by the time I turn 30. I'm gonna take every bit of the next 2 years to just train. I've always dreamed of being like a triple threat, like someone who can dance and act and sing. I don't have a lot of the fundamental skills for that. I'm just learning them now at 28. I want to keep failing. And I want to keep failing boldly because I know that that is what's going to encourage me to grow the most. I believe that your dreams should be accessible to you, no matter what background you come from. And I do believe that that comes from access to leadership skills and career conversations. And I want to find a way to build the community that can do that for you. I want you to know that if I can do it, then you can do it too. And I want to take anything I'm learning from this time of my life and teach you how to do it too. We are in this together. We are learning, we are growing, we are getting hot and fit, and it's going to be so much fun. My light keeps dying, so that is my cue. If you have any questions about being a Disney performer or working for Disney, let me know. Can't wait for this next chapter of life with you all. So I love you so much. Bye!